Hello and welcome back to another episode of Cyber Voices, the official podcast of the Australian Information Security Association, otherwise known as AISA. I'm your host, as always, David Willett, and it is my pleasure to have you with us as we explore the diverse voices of the Australian cyber industry. This special edition of Cyber Voices was recorded at CyberCon 2024 and is part of our series from the conference highlighting some of the thought leaders that came together to make CyberCon so special. Welcome back to Cyber Voices, coming to you from CyberCon 2024. It's day 2. I have a room packed of amazing people. I've got my co-host for today. I've got Emily Wingard. Hello, Emily.
Hello.
And Simona Dimovski. Hello again, Simona.
Hello. Good to be here.
And we have got Thea Dedden from Thales here. How are you, Thea?
Very excited to be here, enjoying CyberCon, and this is my first podcast on the topic of cybersecurity. So
there you
interested
go.
to see how it goes.
Aren't we all? So, first CyberCon though as well, or have you been at
First CyberCon as well?
That's exciting. How are you finding it?
It's huge, honestly, and there is so many interesting topics that there's a little bit of FOMO most days while you're trying to figure out which things to go and see.
Oh, I agree. It's so hard to pick. I think I've put amazing, different talks all on my agenda, and then I've got to pick between 3 different ones that I want to see at the same time.
Yeah. And there's a lot of good quality speakers this year as well, like 400 of them. So it's spoiled for choice. You were saying, though, you are getting some FOMO, though, because you are stuck on the booth a little bit too.
I am a little bit. It's important to get some face time with the industry in particular.
Awesome. And so this is actually, so we do talk to a few people here and we get a lot of impressions from, not a lot of impressions from what the experience has been like actually on the booth and in interacting with the delegates and your customers in that way. What's that been like for you?
I think a lot of the value of CyberCon is that you actually get to interact and collaborate with industry. Mm-hmm. So you're spending time with other vendors, sharing some of the challenges that you see in the market, particularly around emerging technology and emerging trends. So consistently, I'd say our teams, particularly the cyber practitioners, really love that aspect. Mm-hmm. And for myself, it's an opportunity to tell people about the things that Thales does that people really are not aware of, which there's quite a lot, I have to say.
Can you share a couple with us?
Sure. So you probably have some Thales tech on you right now and don't realize it.
Oh.
So SIM cards and security elements in your mobile phones, the smart security in your banking cards, credit cards. Mm-hmm. If you flew in, we landed your plane. So there's a lot that Thales is doing to secure critical infrastructure and commercial infrastructure that people just aren't really aware of.
Amazing. Well, I wasn't aware of that at all. Yeah.
And that is, I've done booth work at events like this before. There's almost a little bit of addictive about it because it's not always necessarily super salesy. It really is just making a bit of a human connection.
Exactly.
Awesome. And you haven't given a talk this year.
I have not. So I have spent quite a bit of time talking around technology transformation and identity at other conferences. Mm-hmm. It's my first CyberCon, so here to see what it's all about. Maybe next year. I
was going to say, maybe we'll have to try and convince you to come do one next year. But you do have something really interesting to talk to us about today, though, which is a project you were involved with the Queensland Government around digital licenses and digital IDs. Now, this is something that has started to emerge in a few states in Australia. Victoria has just started to roll them out as well, where we are now. I've still yet to get mine. But tell us a little bit about this program that you worked on with the Queensland Government and how that went.
So this is genuinely one of the most fun projects that I have had the chance to work on. And not only because we're bringing really new technology to the residents of Queensland, but because the team in the Queensland Government were so enthusiastic and passionate about doing this well.
Digital IDs, I think, is one of those things that it's uncharted territory especially for cybersecurity professionals. It could make it. There is a reason why I haven't gone all in on downloading mine from the Vic government yet. It's because I haven't done a lot of research into it. What were some of the challenges that arose that the government had to overcome in terms of implementing a safe and secure digital ID system?
So I think obviously their priority is to deliver products that are valuable to their residents, but there is quite a respect, I would say, for the cybersecurity profession within Queensland Government. They have quite robust standards, really good procedures, and they decided that the way they could approach digital ID was to look at the international standards landscape to make sure that they were aligning to something that had security and privacy at the heart of what was going to be implemented. And that's unique in Australia. So, as you said, many states are going on a digital credentials journey. Queensland is, in fact, the only one to have implemented something in compliance with international verifiable credentials standards, and that was key to their strategy. So there's two approaches that we've seen around the world to digital ID. One is go fast, test, learn, crash and burn, try not to break anything too badly. And the other is those organizations or jurisdictions who decide that they want to do deep research and prototyping, and that's the path that Queensland took. They looked to the AISA legislation in the European Union. They looked at what was happening in the United States. And then they did something quite unique for government, which was to do a tender sprint with multiple suppliers. And they asked those suppliers, how should we approach this? What should we be worried about when it comes to the security of our citizens' data? And what kind of experience can you give people that isn't overburdened with security?
What was that's fascinating. And what was some of the lived experience that you can share with our listeners about that project? From a challenge perspective, from a security perspective, we'd love to hear more about how that all went.
Tales from the trenches, you mean?
Yeah, exactly right.
Yeah. I think one of the key things that I saw with Queensland is that despite their enthusiasm to bring something to a production environment, they wouldn't be rushed through critical decisions around things like security. So they decided to use an external accreditation framework. They did a really robust cyber assurance process. And on our side as the vendor, that meant bringing our cybersecurity engineers and our PDAs into this group to work in partnership with the Queensland Government, looking at all of the different risks that could apply to the system as a whole, and helping them to build a picture of where they wanted to land and really not going live until they'd met that security baseline. So they were really diligent about that. And I think that's really admirable, particularly when, there's always some state rivalry, and the state next door had a digital driver's license that was getting adopted really quickly, but they chose not to take that pressure on board and actually to focus on the security and usability of the solution over that.
Yeah, that's really interesting because you are right. The states can be so competitive with each other, and there was a lot of people in Victoria who were going, well, where's ours?
I think the thing that got a lot of airtime was how will people use this in the community and what protections will be put in place for them when they choose to share digital data with another party. And that applies to all verifiable credentials. And it's really important that the government makes choices around how people can actually take the data from that solution and share it to other third parties. So Queensland did deep dives into that. They set some boundaries on how that data could be used. And it was all about giving the person their own control over that data. And what that really means in practice is if I have my digital license on my phone and I want to prove I'm over 18, for example, they've built processes where somebody can digitally verify just that I'm over 18. So there's no personal data shared, no date of birth, no name, no address. It's checked securely. It's proven to the third party. And Queensland did so much work with businesses that businesses were willing to accept that, which is the other side of the coin, because there's no point having a situation where you prove something, but the other party doesn't know whether to trust it or not.
And with the community, how have they taken? Have you got much feedback around how it's all going?
It seems to be going really well. They have not done any advertising.
Wow.
And still they have 1,300 plus new users onboarding the app every day, which I think works out to 50 or 60 people an hour downloading a government app. That's pretty unheard of. And they had huge outreach. So they went and spent time in regional communities. They spent time with disability advocacy groups. They spent time with small businesses, really trying to understand what would make life easy for those communities to participate in this new digital economy, essentially.
It's amazing.
And the verification process is something I find particularly interesting in terms of how I might display a digital ID. I mean, I know it can be used online to confirm age or identity, but what are some of the other use cases? Like, what about someone having to flash their license at a bouncer at a nightclub? Like, how do you prepare, or how did they go about preparing businesses like that for be able to say, like, is that an actual ID or is it a fake or just a screenshot?
So they actually partnered with the suppliers to the liquor and gaming industry in Queensland, and they had ourselves, Talus, to work with those vendors to integrate the verification capabilities. So they really thought ahead about that because they had an understanding that there were all of these solutions out there in the market that were tailored to essentially capturing a picture of a physical ID, and that they needed to be uplifted before you could go to production with this digital solution. So you can share it with a QR code engagement or a Bluetooth engagement directly with those machines now that capability's been integrated. And so it meant that those small businesses, pubs, clubs didn't have to buy new technology. They essentially had a software upgrade. And it meant that people could get really good usage out of that digital license and truly not have to carry their wallet with them.
So it strikes me that it's quite an ecosystem, you know, one on the vendor side, of course, the Queensland Government, the suppliers in the chain as well. How much penetration of this technology have we seen in the market, let's say in the Queensland sort of area to date? Like, you know, it's in production. How widely used is it now, apart from people downloading it? But I mean, businesses coming on board as well.
So we look at some of the stats, and what we're seeing is that more than 60% of people have used the driver's license itself in the last week. So it's pretty heavily used.
Yeah.
That means essentially they've opened the application as opposed to having it dormant on their phone. And month by month, we're seeing more organisations put in place solutions that can interact with it. As you might expect, some of the national organisations like major banks were initially hesitant when they weren't sure what standards all of the other states were going to move to. Those barriers are going away with the passage of the digital ID legislation and the agreement to certain standards for certain credentials. So things like pharmacies, we're looking at banks, we're looking at the post office, we're looking at things like your car insurance companies. They're all now starting to accept this as a legal form of identification and also an authority to drive.
And it sounds like Queensland is being quite humble in its approach and its success, because it's a story I haven't heard before. In fact, I was unaware that Queensland had rolled out a digital ID. So are other states or other parts of the world, or is Queensland in fact looking to share its best practice? Is there what can other areas learn, or what can other people who might want to implement this kind of digital ID learn from Queensland's approach?
So they've been very active in a, I guess, regulator to regulator type environment, and it's not really in the public sphere. So I think your observation is pretty on the money in terms of, you know, why aren't we hearing more about this? I think the other side of the coin is that large-scale advertising campaigns, when you're in an environment where you want to do so many practical things, is probably not at the top of their list.
Yeah.
They're preparing for an Olympics, they're rolling out new functionality in the app, they're modernizing city transport. So my read on that is that it's a little bit of prioritization. But what they are doing is things like this ABI research article that they have just participated in, where they're sharing all of the best practices that they used on their journey so that the external market can learn from that.
Interesting. And do you have any insight onto what other features may be coming to the Apple Digital ID? Like what's next for Queensland in this space, or is that all a little hush-hush at the moment?
I would love to tell you, because it's really exciting, and I think they have a compelling vision for what they want interaction with government more broadly to look like in Queensland. But I won't steal their thunder.
And I suppose as other states go down that journey, that incredible journey that you've experienced, what kind of advice could you give them?
I would say when they're thinking about their journey, they need to think about whether it's a driver's license that they want to introduce or whether it's the foundations of digital identity and verifiable credentials that they can build on for lots of other official documentation and documentation that comes from other parties like educational institutions or trade certifications, because the short-term value might be in driver's licenses because of their proliferation, but the long-term value is in the ease of interaction with society and proving your authority or your rights for lots of different purposes.
Round the room, does anyone have a digital ID?
We've got digital ID in New South Wales as well, and driver's license, but I still don't see sort of the level of use apart from, I guess minimal use cases. I think in New South Wales still, I haven't seen it sort of penetrate further than that. And one of my pet peeves is it's not even about ID, but when you go to the shops and then suddenly you have to give them all your PII about your email addresses, your name, a whole set of things that they don't really need to know at all. And I keep on thinking, maybe this isn't the digital ID solution, but when are we going to kind of solve that problem? Maybe that's a side topic altogether. But yeah, we've got digital ID, but I just don't see the use cases being applied probably as much as what I'm hearing in Queensland at the moment. Yeah.
I think New South Wales, they took a different path, and that pathway was to have as many services as possible in the Service New South Wales app at the outset.
Yeah.
And so they had this service-oriented mindset, which I think is great and has its own benefits, whereas Queensland's come at it from an identity basis. And so they've spent more time focusing on that aspect. That's probably how I'd contrast the two approaches.
Yeah, that's a great summary.
That's all right. Emily, does South Australia have digital ID yet?
I don't have it.
You have a driver's license.
I don't actually have I haven't set it up or anything like that, so I haven't utilised it.
We've not done any marketing either then.
South Australia was a really early mover, but they really haven't spoken very broadly about it. They built a proprietary solution and it's sort of stabilised, I would say, and I suspect they're waiting to see what happens at the national level in the Australian Government Digital ID system before they take their next steps.
Is there a risk that the states all go too far in a different direction and that hurts having some kind of like national capability in this space?
What do you mean collaboration across government's always so smooth? I think that there is a really positive atmosphere at the moment between all of the states who have been collaborating around this initial alignment on international standards. And I think everybody has that ambition, but it's a difficult journey in such a new area of technology where the standards are changing, the technology is changing. Large OEMs have a huge role to play in terms of the actual hardware and operating systems that get used. I think sometimes we expect things to move really quickly without recognizing the complexity of what the government has to deal with.
Indeed.
You've just reminded me, I think the federal government does have a digital ID app as well.
Yes, My ID.
My ID, that's right, because I was thinking about that. How much of that has been taken into consideration like in this project with the Queensland government, I wonder, and I'm not sure if you know any.
So it's varied. It's varied state to state is what I would say. The federal government has created a digital identity, but they haven't yet created verifiable credentials aligned to a standard.
Right.
So the identity is in the back end. I don't want to get all like too tech nerdy here, but bear with me. It's essentially the proof of an entity. And the verifiable credential is actually that digital picture of a driver's license on a mobile app. And so they are two separate things.
Yes.
The federal government has that back end proof of an entity part that they use to authenticate to services. And so Queensland has a very similar model. And what we hope in the future is that the front end, which is the verifiable credentials, the digital picture of your driver's license, can be shared across borders, across technical boundaries, because they'll use the same protocols, same international standards, and everybody will live in this nice, interoperable, smooth, well-ordered world.
Yes.
That's the dream.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming in and sharing your story, and congratulations on what sounds like was a very successful project to work on. We hope you enjoy the rest of the conference. There's still so much more of it to go, and thank you for sharing your voice with us today.
You're very welcome.
Thank you.
And enjoy the rest of the conference too.
Well, hello there, fellow podcasters. Are you looking to level up your podcast game? Well, let me tell you about This Is a Studio. This Is a Studio is where we record cyber voices each and every single week. They're located at 693 High Street in Pran and Ikla Hawthorne East. They're Melbourne's go-to video podcast studio. Whether you're starting a podcast or taking your podcast to the next level, they've got everything you need: quality equipment, a professional setup, and a team that lives and breathes podcasts. And if you're like us and thinking about going live, these are the folks behind the scenes at events like the AFL Grand Final, Equitina Melbourne 2024, and of course here at CyberCon 2024 as well. Seriously, these guys really know their stuff. So, if you're ready to make your podcast shine, check them out at thisisastudio.com.au. This is a studio where Melbourne's best podcasts come to life. Thank you for listening to another episode of Cyber Voices. Our music is by Sanar Garut, our show artwork is by Studio Quarantine, and we record our show at This Is a Studio in Pran, Melbourne, part of Popplant Productions. Please make sure you follow the show on your podcast platform of choice and leave us a 5-star review. This will help others find the show. Also, please follow the association on LinkedIn and Instagram. If you want to add your voice to our ever-growing chorus of diverse cyber voices, have questions, feedback, or would like to be a sponsor, you can do so by emailing us at cybervoices@aisa.org.au. That's cybervoices@aisa.org.au. Are you an AISA member? If not, you should consider joining our network of over 12,000 members across Australia. An AISA membership can open doors, build professional networks, create lifetime friendships, and offer exclusive training, events, and other perks. Become a member today by heading to our website at aisa.org.au. That is all for today. I hope you will join us again next time on Cyber Voices.